Hello and welcome to our November 2022 webcast. This month, we're going to be focused on the FTC safeguards rule. Now, you've probably seen that as it went to effect January of this year, but there's been adjustments. There was an effective date for compliance of December, but then that changed just this week. And so we're just going to go into a little bit of this, and then we're going to have a little more in-depth series later where we'll be able to help you to see just what is required and what you can do to comply. So what has changed? Well, let's just take a look at some of these things as we do. Now, here is something that just came out. And just to help you have a better understanding of the FTC safeguards rule, there were some adjustments made to it. And as you'll see, that there was, what they wanted to do was just make sure that financial institutions would be able to put into place safeguards to protect customers' information. And we understand why that's necessary, because everything that financial institutions, not banking ones, carry, it's enough to be able to start a new identity, to steal whatever monetary funds someone has. And so that was required for all of them to make adjustments to develop, implement, and maintain a comprehensive security system in order to keep customers' information safe. And that's our goal. And we know that's your goal as well. And so the deadline was December of this year. Well, just on November 15th, we can see the headline: FTC extends deadline by 6 months for compliance with some changes to the financial data security rule. And so we're just going to look over what some of those adjustments are and why this change happened. And as you'll see, some of it was based on reports from Small Business Administration's Office of Advocacy. And notice what why they mention that there should be a need for this extension. They said there's a shortage of qualified personnel. Well, that's one of the requirements, is first selecting and designating a qualified person. They said, well, there's a shortage of personnel to implement an information security program. And then they said there's supply chain issues, and that may make it difficult in getting the necessary equipment for upgrading security systems. And so that's understandable. We've experienced that with some of our vendors during the pandemic. And then they said all these difficulties were exacerbated because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then they also realized that if you're a small business, then it's difficult for small businesses to come into compliance. And so a lot of that's because of budget and lack of qualified personnel. But something that we've also seen is that smaller businesses are able to move and adjust quicker than bigger businesses. And so in some cases, you are at an advantage if you are a small business. But notice some of the adjustments here that were set to go into effect and have compliance by December 9th, a little less than 1 month away. And these were these areas that all come under 314.4. Is designate a qualified individual to oversee an information security program, develop a written assessment outlining that your risks, limit who can monitor and access sensitive customer information, encrypt all sensitive information, train security personnel, develop an incident response plan, periodically assess the security practices of service providers. and implement multi-factor authentication or another method with equivalent protection for anyone accessing financial and customer information. So those are things that says now you have 6 more months, June 2023, to comply with these areas. And so this is the letter from the Small Business Administration Office of Advocacy, and they outline these areas. There's a link to that in the FTC website. But notice these areas, because there's still some areas that you still have to comply with now to get started. And they within this effective date notice, they outlined some of the things that were from that letter. And notice this here. It says, as noted, the commission finds that there is good cause to revise the effective date of the portions of the safeguards rule that were previously designated to go into effect December 9th of 2022 immediately. The commission recognizes that while this rule revision goes into effect immediately, the result of the revision is to give regulated parties additional time to come into compliance. So they would not be prejudiced if the change goes into effect immediately. And so you can see it's allowing you, if you fall under the category financial institutions of a non-banking, it says it's giving you additional time to come into compliance. And even if you're an accountant, CPA, well, the IRS, they've been making reference to this FTC safeguards rule, in which tax preparers must create and enact security plans to protect client data. Failure to do so may result in an FTC investigation. Now, but notice it says the IRS may treat a violation of the FTC safeguards rule as a violation of the IRS Revenue Procedure 2007-40, which sets the rule for tax professionals acting as an authorized IRS e-provider. So either way, from the IRS standpoint, well before 2022, they said these are things that you need to implement if you're a tax preparer. And they give you some guidance, and they make reference to this FTC safeguards rule. And this is where the flexibility lies for you, is that not every business will be the same. There are aspects of the rule that it says you have to comply with. However, you have to have your security plan that outlines what areas fit your business and how you will cover all of those areas and how you're going to implement them. And so with this are some of the steps. It says they're flexible, where you have to designate one or more employees to coordinate, identify, and assess the risk, design and implement safeguard programs, and regularly monitor and test it, monitor your service providers, evaluate the program. So these are all normal things. And here within this other one, it outlines some things that a good security plan outlines. And so if you are a tax preparer, IRS.gov has some wonderful information that will help you in to begin thinking about what you need to do. And so something that we want to do to assist. We know that there are many businesses that are competent and they'll be able to get this easily. However, there may be some aspects that some businesses need assistance with multi-factor authentication, with making sure that all devices are encrypted, that you're keeping track of those encryption keys. And so those are things that we can assist with security training in these. Let me just pull up some of these areas in 314.4. And it starts outlining some of these elements where you're responsible for this. A qualified individual. We can assist you as an outsourced business, because could be, it says that the qualified individual may be employed by you, an affiliate, or a service provider. So you can outsource that. And if you're using a service provider, well, then it gives this reminder. It says, one, you remain responsible. You retain responsibility for compliance for your business. Even though you have someone to assist you, it's still on you to determine what's in that information security plan. And so that's why you need a qualified person that's going to oversee them. Then you have to have a risk assessment. Now, that's not going to be every business. However, it still is good to understand what that compiles, because you need to know what data you have, where it lies, so that you'll know, one, what you need to encrypt, where you need to attach multi-factor authentication, and what controls do you put in place to protect it in all those different areas. So if you have some data sprawl, you've got information all over the place, those are things that we can work with you to help you to identify the data, perhaps even classify it, and now help you determine how do we consolidate it if necessary, or implement controls to protect it. And what are the risks? What risk will you accept? What risk will you address? How do you limit access to that? Making sure there's encryption, and not just for the data, but what about your networks? Is the wireless, are your networks set up properly? And so these are areas that it's number 5, implementing multi-factor authentication for any individual accessing any information system. So is your information on the cloud? Is there multi-factor authentication there? Is it on your computer? That's even addressing multi-factor authentication. And so do you have a way of implementing that? Do you know what solutions are best? Those are things that we can assist you with. And then with determining data retention policies, these are things that you'll have to outline within your security plan. And so there's things that we can work with you in getting that set up in the interim, so that now you'll know what's your goal for the next 6 months. What do you have to do to comply? So there's so much within this, but really, it's just going to take a little homework for you. One, you'll have to become familiar, because you still retain the responsibility for compliance. If you're a tax preparer, as we saw, IRS will also treat a violation of these as a violation of their procedures, which could affect you being an authorized IRS provider. How will that impact your business? I don't know. But really, the goal is what you can do to meet compliance, to do what's best. Unfortunately, they're bad people, and they're taking advantage of those that are not taking the necessary steps. And so what we want to do is assist you in meeting that, whether it's just providing information, guidance, consultation, or if you need us to would like us to act as an outsource provider, and even provide you with some of the tools and services. So these are just things, perhaps you were already aware of the update, the extension of the deadline, but now those things are available, and we'll make sure that here you have some of the links as well. But thank you for tuning in. It's a shorter one for this month of November. but do your best to comply. Stay safe, and we will talk to you soon.